All right, welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some serious tactical territory today.
That's right, we're tackling ADP 390.
We're going to break down Chapter 1, Tactical Fundamentals.
Yeah, we know you, our listeners, you're the ones out there on the front lines.
You're the boots on the ground.
So we're going to make sure this is relevant to your mission.
That's right, and we'll cut through that dense military jargon.
We'll give you the good stuff, the need to know.
Absolutely. So let's get right to it. ADP 390 kicks off by defining tactics.
Right. It lays it out as the employment and ordered arrangement of forces in relation to each other.
In other words, where you put your troops and what you have them do.
Well, it's a good starting point, but think of tactics more like a dynamic interplay.
Dynamic interplay. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Give me an example.
Imagine a chess game, right?
Okay.
But the stakes are way higher.
Okay, so how does that translate to a real-world scenario?
Okay, so picture this. You're a platoon leader. You're pinned down by enemy fire.
Okay, been there.
Do you go with a full frontal assault?
Risky.
Or do you call in artillery support and try to flank the enemy?
Tactical decisions.
That's tactics in action, making those choices under pressure.
Thinking on your feet. I like it.
And with limited intel. It's about using what you have to gain the upper hand.
So it's about being adaptable, not just following a script.
Exactly. And to really get a grasp on tactics, we have to see where they fit. We got to zoom out and look at the bigger picture of warfare.
Okay, so how does ADP 390 break that down?
Well, it breaks it down into 3 levels.
Hmm.
Tactical, operational, and strategic.
Okay, now these levels, they always seem to trip me up a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah.
Can you break those down for me?
Yeah, it's all about perspective. So the document uses this example of the 9th Armored Division, right? World War II.
Okay, capturing the bridge at Remagen.
Exactly, capturing that bridge. Now, on the surface, you look at it, tactical win, right? But that single action, huge ripple effects.
Oh, yeah. Huge ripple effects across the entire European theater.
Exactly, impacting operations, influencing the entire strategic direction of the war.
So what you're saying is a small unit action
Right.
can have massive implications.
Huge implications. And this is where it gets really interesting, especially for you guys, today's Army.
Okay.
The document really emphasizes how much technology, the information environment, it's blurring the lines
Oh, for sure.
between tactical, operational, and strategic. What would have been a localized firefight, 20 years ago,
Right?
could have global consequences now.
Instantly because of social media.
Exactly.
Wow, I never even thought about it like that.
Because of things like instant communication.
It's like the butterfly effect,
Yeah.
but with a lot more firepower behind it.
Right, and that's why ADP 390 stresses that tactics. It's not a rigid set of rules.
Okay.
It's a blend of art and science.
There's that phrase again, the art of tactics.
Mm,
What does that even mean?
right.
For a soldier on the ground, what does that mean?
It means you got to be adaptable. You got to think outside the box. Okay.
You've trained on the weapon systems, you know the drills.
Yeah.
That's the science.
Right.
But when the bullets start flying
Yeah.
and the plan goes out the window, that's where the art comes in.
So give me an example. How do you see this art of tactics playing out? Like, give me a real world example.
So ADP 390, it highlights 3 key aspects.
Okay.
First, resourcefulness.
Okay.
Using what you have, even if it's unconventional, to achieve the objective.
Improvise, adapt, overcome. Love.
Exactly. Second, making those sound decisions.
Right.
In the heat of the moment,
Mm-hmm.
when you have incomplete information. And third,
Okay.
never underestimate that human element.
The human element.
The fatigue, the fear, morale, even the enemy's morale.
Right.
These are all factors.
Sure.
And a great leader recognizes and leverages those aspects.
So you're saying it's not just about knowing the technical stuff. It's also about understanding, like, the psychology
Yes,
of warfare?
absolutely.
Now, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of interesting, ADP 390 talks about seizing, retaining, and exploiting the initiative. What does that even mean? Break that down for me.
It's about controlling the fight. Think about, like, a boxer.
Okay.
Always one step ahead. They're not just reacting, they're in control.
So how does a unit, how do they actually achieve that on the battlefield?
Well, that's where combat power comes in.
Combat power.
And it's not just about who has the biggest guns.
Right, right.
ADP 390 defines it as the total means of destructive, constructive, and informational capabilities.
So it's about using all of your tools effectively,
Yes.
not just the ones that go boom.
Exactly. And it breaks combat power down into 8 key elements.
You're
You've
done.
got leadership, information, command and control, movement and maneuver, intelligence, fires, sustainment,
Okay.
and protection.
Each one of those is critical.
Critically important. Think of it like a mechanic, right?
Okay.
You got to know which tool to use and when to use it.
Right. You wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a bolt. All right, so we're talking about different tools for different jobs. Let's talk about the difference between hasty and deliberate operations.
Okay.
Because sometimes you got to move fast,
Right.
and sometimes you have time to plan.
Exactly. So hasty operations, you're prioritizing speed.
Got it.
You're reacting quickly to an enemy move,
Okay.
maybe seizing an opportunity.
Like that bridge at Remagen.
Exactly. Remember, minimal preparation.
Right.
Deliberate operations, it's like a carefully choreographed dance. You got time to plan, you rehearse.
Totally different scenarios.
Yeah, but both important to master.
Absolutely.
And while those examples are kind of clear-cut,
Right.
ADP 390 points out that most real-world situations,
Yeah.
they kind of fall somewhere in between.
Of course, yeah. They're not always black and white.
Right.
So how does a leader know which approach to take? I mean, what are those factors that you're considering when you have to make that call?
It boils down to judgment,
Judgment. Okay.
experience,
Experience.
and a deep understanding of the operations process,
Okay.
which ADP 390 really emphasizes.
Right.
It's analyzing the situation, the commander's intent, your capabilities, then adapting.
It's like all those drills. You remember back in training?
Yeah.
That seemed kind of chaotic at the time.
Right.
They're building that muscle memory
Absolutely.
for making sound decisions under pressure.
Exactly.
Speaking of pressure, we can't talk about tactics without talking about risk.
Right.
Because in combat, risk is unavoidable.
Yeah.
How does ADP 390, how does it tell us to handle that?
Well, it starts by acknowledging that risk is inherent in
Right.
every operation. We're not striving for zero risk.
Right.
We're looking for informed and calculated risk-taking.
Okay, so how does a leader even begin to wrap their head around something as big as risk?
It's a big one, right?
It feels unmanageable sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you even quantify that?
It's definitely a big concept. But ADP 390, it breaks it down,
Yeah.
emphasizes intelligence,
Intelligence.
experience,
Okay.
and sound judgment.
Got it.
When you're assessing and managing risk, it can definitely feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Intelligence is your map.
Okay.
Experience is your compass.
Gotcha.
And judgment.
Right.
That's what helps you navigate when things get tough.
I like that. So even with limited intel,
Right.
a seasoned leader,
Yeah.
they can still make a good decision
Exactly.
based on that experience, their gut feeling.
That gut feeling, that intuition, it's important.
That makes sense.
And that's what you get over time through experience.
Absolutely. So what about concrete steps? Let's say you're a leader, you're in a risky situation. What can you do? What are some practical things based on the document to manage that risk?
So ADP 390 lays out some specific things you can do.
Okay.
Think about increasing your security perimeter.
Okay. Yeah.
You want to deploy robust recon security elements.
Right.
Adding those layers of protection.
So even if something happens,
Right.
you've got that contingency in place.
Okay.
It's like having a backup plan, right?
That backup plan, crucial.
Yeah.
It's all about calculated risk, not just rushing into danger.
Right.
And this goes back to what we talked about before, that balance.
Right.
Accomplishing the mission.
Right.
But safeguarding your soldiers,
Big responsibility.
huge responsibility, weighing on a leader's mind.
It's a heavy weight for sure, knowing
Yeah.
those decisions directly impact
Absolutely.
your soldiers' lives.
ADP 390 acknowledges that.
Yeah.
Acknowledges that human cost
Right.
while driving home the importance of decisive action.
Right.
It's a tough balance.
It is. It is. That reminds me, you touched on this earlier, that idea of agility
Right.
on the battlefield.
Agility, yeah.
What's that look like in
Mhm.
practice? How are you agile in a firefight?
It's about being able to adapt, think faster than the enemy.
So it's like a chess game, high-stakes chess game.
Exactly.
But the board is constantly changing.
Constantly changing.
You got to think quickly.
You got to be ready to react, readjust.
So it's not just physical speed.
Right.
It's mental agility, too.
Absolutely. Processing that information,
Right.
thinking ahead, making those adjustments.
As the situation changes around you.
Exactly.
And ADP 390 talks about training for
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Clear communication, trust. How does that all fit together?
Okay, so picture this. You're part of a fire team.
Okay.
You're so in sync with your buddies.
Okay.
You can anticipate each other's moves without even thinking.
Wow.
Drilled it so many times.
Right.
Communication is almost instinctive.
That's what we're talking about.
That's a
That level of sync trust
It's incredible.
must be an amazing feeling.
There's nothing like it,
Yeah.
but it takes work.
Right.
Constant training, open
Yeah.
communication.
And that shared understanding of the mission.
You got it.
Yeah. And probably a good dose of courage under fire, too, right?
Absolutely. Can't forget about courage.
Right. Right.
Speaking of training, ADP 390 talks about communication.
Yeah.
Clear, concise, and it uses this phrase, doctrinally consistent verbiage.
Okay, so everyone is on the same page, using the same terminology,
Exactly.
especially when those bullets start flying.
Right. No time for misunderstandings.
Everyone's got to be speaking the same language.
From top to bottom.
That makes sense. So clear communication builds trust.
Yeah.
And trust is what lets you operate effectively under pressure.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Right. You got to trust the people around you.
You got to trust your soldiers.
You got to trust your leaders.
Trust the plan.
That's the foundation.
That's the foundation for a successful operation.
It sounds like what ADP 390 is getting at is that the modern battlefield,
Yeah,
it's complex.
it is.
Things change quickly,
Very quickly.
and that ability to adapt,
Right.
think on your feet.
It's more crucial now than ever before.
Absolutely.
And a big part of that,
Yeah.
understanding how the Army plans and executes those operations.
You're talking about the operations process again.
The operations process, it's crucial.
And it seems like that's something that ADP 390 really emphasizes.
It's the glue that holds it all together.
Okay.
Think of it like a cycle.
Okay.
You plan, you execute, you assess, you refine,
Gotcha.
and it allows those commanders, leaders at all levels
Right.
to adjust to what's happening.
So it sounds like mastering that cycle
Right.
is essential for achieving what ADP 390 calls the commander's intent.
The commander's intent, it's essential.
Yeah.
That's the overarching goal, the why.
The why.
Why are we doing this? That's what allows subordinate leaders to make decisions.
Right, even without those explicit orders.
Exactly, because they understand the bigger picture.
So it's about empowering those leaders at all levels
That's it.
to make the tough calls when maybe communication is down.
Absolutely.
The situation is changing rapidly.
That's what it's all about.
And that ties back to risk management.
Right, right.
When you empower your subordinates,
Mm-hmm.
you're creating that culture.
You're fostering initiative.
Initiative, calculated risk-taking. They're not afraid to act because they get it, they understand
They understand the why.
the intent, the bigger picture.
You got it.
It all comes back to trusting your people
Absolutely.
to make the right call.
When it matters most.
And that trust, it's earned.
It is. It's not just given.
Right.
It's built through those shared hardships.
Right, those tough training scenarios.
Rigorous training.
Open communication.
Honest communication.
Yeah, and then you have that unit that can achieve victory,
Absolutely.
even in the most challenging environments.
The most challenging.
So it sounds like ADP 390 is saying that at its core,
Yes.
warfare is about the human element,
The human element.
just as much as it's about the technology
It's about the people.
and the firepower.
And that brings us to another important aspect of tactical success.
Okay.
Understanding your adversary.
So knowing your enemy,
Just as important as knowing yourself.
right, like Sun Tzu said.
The document talks about situational understanding,
Okay.
analyzing enemy capabilities, their doctrine.
So you're trying to get inside their heads.
You got to think like they think.
Figure out how they operate.
Exactly.
You got to be able to anticipate their next move.
Predict those reactions.
It's like playing chess with someone you can't see.
Exactly.
You have to learn their tells, their go-to move.
And their weaknesses, right.
Right. Right. Exploit those weaknesses.
That's how you outmaneuver them.
This has been a really insightful conversation.
It has.
ADP 390, it really drives home this point.
What's that?
The modern battlefield is constantly changing.
Oh, he's evolving, yeah.
There's no playbook for every situation.
No one size fits all, that's for sure.
You got to be ready to think on your feet, make those tough calls.
With limited information sometimes.
Absolutely. So for our listeners out there,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want them to take away? What's that nugget of wisdom?
One nugget of wisdom.
Yeah.
That's tough. There's so much good stuff in here, but I'd say this. Never stop learning.
Okay.
Always be adapting. Always be growing as a tactician.
So ADP 390,
It's like a foundation.
it is a solid foundation
But it's up to each one of us to build on that.
through experience
Critical thinking.
and that drive to be better.
So don't just memorize the doctrine.
Right.
Internalize it.
Question it.
Find those ways to apply it to your own challenges.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Mistakes are part of the process.
They are. That's how we learn.
You got to turn those almost got it moments
Right.
into lessons learned.
Absolutely. And as you move up in your career,
Right.
remember leadership.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of combat power.
Your decisions impact lives.
Absolutely. It's a heavy responsibility,
No doubt about it.
but it's also a privilege.
Leading soldiers in defense of our nation.
That's what it's all about.
And ADP 390,
Yeah.
it gives us the tools to do that effectively,
Ethically.
professionally.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well said, well said.
All right, everyone. Until next time.
Stay frosty out there.